So, hello everybody and welcome back to Samyuzong after the break, the winter break. So Happy New Year. It's a little bit late for that. But on the other hand, it's quite early for the Tibetan New Year, so we're sort of in the middle. And I think it's Losar is actually a bit later this year. I think it's in 1st of March, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, it's all one long day. So we're going to be continuing to look at the wonderful teachings of Akong Rinpoche. Anyway, before we do that, let's say the prayers. And I think this time, because it's the first one of the month, I like to really plug in with the Tibetan. So we'll say the lineage prayer in Tibetan. But first, I'll say the prayer to the supplication of the root lama. Paden sawe lama rinpoche dagi chiwo pende de shukla kachin chempo gone je sung de kusun ching yodup satu so. And then the lineage prayer. Doje chan chen telo narotang marpa mila chuje rampopa desam shecha kunchen karmapa jesh jung jaya jad pazinandang ditak sasam paden druk pasok sablam chajar chilang anipe nyame dagan dakpo kajura sawandip sukajulamanam japasinu namta chinjilo shenlo gomji kampa sung pashin Senor Kandra Chakshan Mea Patang Sendir de Tak Chepe Gom Chen La Nyeko Shempa Me Pa Chen Jilo Magu Gom Jigo Sung Pashin Menga Tergo Jepe La Mala Chandu sawade pe gom chen la chamin magu chewa chen jialo yang me gom jiang a share sung pa shin kang sha to pe ngo so amate machu te ka jo pe gom chen la gom cha lu tang chawa chen jilo nam cho ngo che kor sun pa jin chiang mayin cheriang charawala mangaro pa charwe gom chen la Kode yerme topa chinjiro chewa kuntuyada la matang trame chuchi pala long chuching satang alam jianten rabzone doje changi compagnon top show. Okay, so we can put these to one side for now. So the teachings that we're doing from Akong Rinpoche, this is the third session, and the teachings are from a book which was of his teachings, which was transcribed. So this is the book that we're using, called Limitless Compassion. And we're going through the chapters, not necessarily every chapter in each order. We'll just see. So far it has been, but there may be times when we might skip one or not. Yeah, so you can see I've got 2 copies here. This copy was one of the original ones, and as you open it, it falls to pieces because the glue wasn't very good. And I thought that Rinpoche deserved a book that you could actually open and use without it falling to pieces. So this is sometime later when I've had some rebound with spiral binding. If anybody would like to get this book, the new book, then they. So just thought I'd let you know that. But because I'd already started with this book and made a few pencil things in the margin, then I'll carry on with this. No, but the contents are the same. Okay, so this session is the 3rd session, and it's called, the topic is calming the waves of emotions. So we all have emotions, and we're not always calm. So it's very, very useful exercise. And it's really important to sort of live this legacy of Rinpoche's teachings. They're not just you read them and that's it, and oh yeah, that's that. I've read that book now. The point is to apply them, and that's why I thought, well, let's study them, let's go into them together, and we can discuss things or just go through them and then talk later, however you want to do it. So, calming the waves of emotions. And we all experience them on a daily basis, even maybe an hourly basis, a minute-by-minute basis. Sometimes they're not problematic, but sometimes they are, and they can really take over. So this topic is of really great importance, because if we're under the sway of transient and sometimes turbulent emotions, then it'll affect our lives it can affect our lives in a very negative way. It can really be under the spell of them. And so we need to learn how to calm them in order to become more clear and more stable. So right at the beginning of this session, this section in the book, it really is in pieces. There's a subheading to this chapter in which Rinpoche says, everything that arises and which makes us unhappy comes from us. We have it within ourselves. Now, that's not necessarily that easy to understand or accept, is it? We generally tend to blame something or somebody else for the things we're experiencing that we don't like. It's because she said that, he did that. It's not my fault, We generally go to that, have that sort of attitude. Now, well, I think when he says this, that everything that arises which makes us unhappy comes from within us, he's not saying that all the bad things that happen in the world, all the negative happens in the world, is our fault. He's not saying that. He's saying that what makes us unhappy about that is down to us. Of course, life is not necessarily a bowl of cherries, and that things happen that we like, things happen that we don't like, things that are positive, negative, but how we experience them and how we deal with them, that's what makes us happy or unhappy or just stable. I think it's more to do with that. So anyway, let's go into it in some detail. But I think, judging from the sort of perplexed looks on some people's faces, it's not easy or comfortable for us to accept that, because we're so used to blaming other people or circumstances beyond our control for our discomfort or unhappiness. But actually, that is more our mistaken way of seeing that that's the cause. So therefore, what we first need to deal with is how we are seeing things, how we are understanding and looking at things. And in a way, that's actually great. That's really positive, isn't it? Because if there's something wrong with the way we're looking at things, then it's within our possibility, our hands, to be able to adjust, to do this fine-tuning that is necessary into the way that we're seeing things. So then that means that we're responsible. We have agency. We're not just being tossed on the whims of whatever, you know. Of course, it's not. Anyway, we'll get to the global aspect later on. But we need to start with how we're looking at things, because it's through that prism that we experience everything. Sometimes I've used the kind of metaphor, a very basic metaphor of having, like, imagine you're a house with windows instead of eyes, and the windows are dirty, so whatever you see through those windows is going to be distorted. Something like that. Whereas when the view is clear, it's not that it makes everything in the garden roses, but you're seeing clearly, and that takes the poison out of the situation. You're seeing things as they are. They may not be what you want, or what you don't want, what you desire and want to grasp, or what you repel or deny. Those things, those judgments don't come into it, but you're seeing things as they are. When the windows are perfectly clear, that's what you're seeing. So, when we accept responsibility for our seemingly negative experiences, then it means we're not helpless. You know, we're not the helpless victims. We have some power over how we experience things, how we see them. We have agency, and we become able to transform our experience in the light of understanding. Because we've understood something, it changes. It changes how we feel, how we think, how we experience. So therefore, we have to start with ourselves. Because without that, we're continually seeing things in a distorted way. And that's really the basis of all the Buddhist teachings, is you have to start with yourself, and that is not a selfish thing to start with. It's the only thing to start with. Because that will transform your understanding. Yeah? And then you see more clearly, and you can deal with whatever comes up in a more rational and appropriate way, and a more compassionate way, with more understanding, rather than just being at the mercy of your likes and dislikes or mistaken ways of seeing. So we have to start with ourselves and look into, in our daily life, you know, let's just start with the personal first of all. Before we go global, let's just be personal and look at what upsets us and what we can do about it. So now I'm going to read some passages from the book. So, I'm going to go from the beginning. When you feel anger, for example, towards someone, you should realize that it's your anger, it's not that other person's anger, you're the one feeling the anger. Whatever it is they might have done or not done, you're the one feeling the anger. So that's what you need to look at. Because you can control that, you can understand and do something about that. You can't do something about how they perceive things. I mean, you can try and have a conversation, but if you're coming from an angry place, it's probably not going to work out. So first you have to settle your own understanding and emotions. So if you stop talking and look into your own anger. If what a person is saying makes you respond, it's because you have programmed yourself to be angry. They've not said, I'm going to say this and you're going to be very angry. You have programmed that as your response to whatever it is that has happened or has been said. That's your programming. Well, you've self-programmed for that reaction. So you have to analyze yourself. Why are you angry? So this is normally something you should do not when you're angry, but when you have some sort of peace of mind. You know, you don't do it on the spur of the moment. You need to look at this like, now in a neutral situation, unless I've made you very angry by even saying this. So, you know, when you're more relaxed, and then you can look back at something that recently did make you angry, but you're not angry about it now, but you, at least not to the extent when you're experiencing the anger. So, but you can look at it in a more dispassionate way. So you go through the process of that anger. So then he's saying, you imagine you turn into the other person, and the other person turns into you. And you have this imaginary dialogue with each other. Find out why the other person made you angry. Try to find an appreciation of that person. You may not be able to achieve this spontaneously. It takes time and effort. But you may be able to achieve it after some time and trying it out. And then he ends this paragraph saying, poison cannot be overcome in one treatment. You have to keep repeating it and practicing it many times. You're talking about changing your way of seeing and looking and reacting, you know. So this is our self-programming, and that's a deep, deep change to make. But it's definitely possible, absolutely. So now, initially, if you've never done any practice, you don't even know you're angry. You know, sometimes you might be exhibiting anger, but you don't even see it that you're angry. You don't know that you're angry. You're not aware of being angry. But if you meditate, you can come to realize, I'm angry. And then, if you keep doing the same practice, the time it takes to get out of your state of anger will become shorter. So at first it's difficult and takes a while. You might not get out of it straight away, but with practice, you can identify when you're angry, and already just the identification means that you've kind of stepped outside of it slightly. You know, because when you're in the throes of anger, you're just so involved with it you can't see. We say blinded with anger, don't we? So when you're not angry, but maybe you can think of a situation when you were. So there is a bit of anger comes up just thinking about it, but nothing like it would have been in the actual situation, and somebody's really, whatever it is, you know. So it's not got that power, but maybe in a little bit to just make things, you know. And so that's more doable, that's more copable with. Yeah, so that's the time to meditate. So we're talking about practice here in terms of acknowledging that sometimes you get angry, and then if you want to do something about it, have a think about it, go into it. But instead of like just reliving all the things that made you get into that state in the first place, you're taking a more dispassionate approach. It's like you're being your own doctor in a way. You're sort of stepping outside of the situation, but you acknowledge and to some extent feel the shadow of that anger, but you're more able to practice with it, to meditate on it and see it for what it is without the red hot heat or sometimes the white heat of the actual anger. So eventually like you might start off, it might take you a day to get out of that anger, later half a day, then an hour, and then you may be able to overcome, overcome the anger as and when it arises. So, not just in retrospect, but something happens and instead of clicking into that angry response, because you've been doing the practice and you've been working with it, then you may be able to overcome the anger as it arises. Or perhaps as you are fighting with it, you'll be able to stop the anger. You have to keep on working at it the whole time. If it happens with the same person again and again, then it becomes almost like a story with that person. This is the response that you have with each other or whatever. If the same person repeating the same thing, then before you go to see that person, maybe do a little meditation. Yeah. You prepare yourself and think, okay, I'm about to see this person, we've got some beef or whatever it is, likely to kind of trigger you. So before that, you have to put yourself into that person's presence, you do some meditation and get into the more, the wiser state of being. So you know that you have an irrational state response, or not a wise response, so put yourself in a good, peaceful, stable frame of mind first, and then you be more objective, when you come into a situation with that person. And it's not easy, no one's saying it's easy. It takes time, it takes practice. But it can be done. And then, if you look at the positive things in your life and what's going well in your life, then, you will have a more positive experience. You look at what's positive in your life. You've got a lot of positive things that we take for granted. Because they're not problematic, we sort of just get used to them and we take them for granted. So look at what's positive in your life and appreciate it. Treasure it. Because if you only focus on the negative things, then that becomes your experience. And that becomes your way of being more often, because that's what you focused on more often. So you become an angry person, generous a lot of the time, or an upset person, or not in a good state, doesn't always maybe show itself as full on anger, but inside you could be boiling so, with a bit of control so that other people don't know it so much, but they won't feel attracted to your warmth and kindness, probably not. So if you just, if you're always looking only at the negative and never appreciate the positive, then it's not a great way of living your life. You won't be very happy. Of course, if you don't want to change, then if you don't want to improve anything, if you want to just stay everything the way it is, and you're not interested in changing for the better, then focusing on the negative is definitely the wrong thing for you to do, because you'll just stay negative. But if you realize that there are negatives in your life and you do want to change them, then it's necessary to look into them. Otherwise, how can you deal with it? If you don't look into it, you'll just be repeat, the same old things, triggering again and again. And we can see this in ourselves if we look. Very often we look outwards and it's easier to see in others. But for sure, it'll be happening inside too. So say you have 10 negative things you have to deal with one at a time. You can't do everything all at the same time, so you deal one at a time. But unless you are working on your mind and you want to change, then there's no benefit in looking at the negative, because you just stay negative. So this is for people who want to make an improvement. If you don't, well, then you would just stop here, yeah. But yeah, because then it's probably, if you don't want to transform what is experienced as negative into something more positive, then there's no point to doing any practice. There really isn't. You just stay the same or get worse. So he's saying in order to change and improve, it's necessary to look at our own situation fully, and not only the positive, not only the negative, but in the round, appreciate the positive. So you have to look at the positive as well, of course, and what you experience and enjoy, then you appreciate that. But you also have to look at what's negative and that needs to be improved or transformed, you could say. So he's giving an example now. He says, for example, if you have a house, do you look at each year at what needs repairing, or do you look at what you don't need to repair? I mean, this hits home very strongly with me because I don't own a house, but I'm responsible for this building, and there's always something that needs repairing. So, it was opened in 1808. There's lots goes on in this building, so this hits home quite effectively. But I'm sure you can translate it into your own environment. There's always something. So, of course, you can be in La La Land and you don't notice anything until maybe the roof falls on your head, and then you have to really do something. So it's true. If you want to have a good environment, then you have to look after that environment, don't you? So when there's a leak or something, or there's a broken window, or whatever it is, you need to deal with that. You need to repair whatever needs repairing, and it's the same with yourself. So, of course, you can appreciate what's fine about yourself, and you don't have to worry about that. But what does need fixing, that's where you need to put the attention, isn't it? But first you have to see what needs fixing. You have to be honest with yourself. You might not be the most angry person in the world, but anger shows itself in a lot of different ways, and on a more sort of quite basic way or common way, you could say, is impatience. There's a lot of impatience. I recognize it in myself, definitely. Probably not all of it, but I know that I can get quite impatient. I'm busy running around and something takes a bit longer, or somebody takes, that kind of thing. That's low-level anger. So that we need to work on that. And of course, sometimes you can be very explosive, and then you need to work on that, or however it shows itself, and the situations you find yourself in, your responses to others. So if you have a house, you need to look at what you need to repair. Suppose a door handle is coming off. If you have a door that is broken, then it's better to repair it so you've got a decent door that you can actually walk in and out of. But how about the change negative to positive? So appreciation means that everything that is happening to you and every experience you are happening, you accept, you don't reject it. That doesn't mean to say if something's unpleasant you have to enjoy it or wallow in it. But you accept what's happening, you don't reject it, and then you think, how can I learn from this situation? So sometimes things are pleasant, sometimes they're not pleasant. That's life, isn't it? Nobody has it all good all the time. So things are up and down, things happen, I accept this. So it no longer gives you such negative feelings. You just accept that something's happened. Like, for example, you get ill. Nobody wants to get ill, but sometimes you get ill, and sometimes you can get very ill. So there's no point, poor me, why me, only me, it's not fair. Then you're just making things worse for yourself. So you accept, first of all, something's happened. So, for example, you're ill. And then you think, okay, so this can be useful. If I accept this, so it no longer gives me these negative feelings because I've accepted the situation, then you don't feel that as soon as this happens, or you see this person or that person, that you want to run away. When you truly accept something, then you are able to deal with what's happening. You're not in denial. Acceptance is the opposite of denial, isn't it? You're not pretending it's not there. So something's happened that, is not what you would have chosen to happen, but you're able to deal with it because you've accepted that it's there. So then you're not all wound up, and then you can't deal with it because you're too fraught with whatever the emotion is. You're at the prey of the emotions. So if you accept it, then you've not changed the situation, but you've changed how you're experiencing it already just through the acceptance. But on the other hand, if something very negative is happening in your life and you're not able to deal with it, if it's very negative, then if it's possible to distance yourself from it, then maybe you need to do that. Until you've got more command over yourself, there are times when it might be wiser to just step away. It depends how strong you are and how practiced you are. So we can't go from zero to whatever the opposite of zero, infinity, in one fell swoop. Things have to be done in stages. So if there are obstacles or negativities that you're not able to face, that it's just too much for you, then it's better to move away from them if you can, at least until you've built up your understanding and your experience. So sometimes we might feel that we really don't want to forgive someone. They're just unforgivable. Now, what is the point of that? You're saddled with this horrible negative feeling about a situation or somebody or something because you just refuse to forgive them. It's just impossible. So who benefits from that? The other person definitely doesn't benefit, but do you think you benefit from that? I don't think so. You carry on being angry with that and unforgiving. There is, if you do want to forgive, so first of all, you must understand, in fact, that you do want to forgive because there is absolutely no benefit in not forgiving. No benefit from that. You're not going to achieve anything with that. Forgiving is a much better objective. Doesn't mean to say that everything in the garden is going to be perfect and just exactly how you want it, but you will feel better. Jane, could you turn the thermostat up a wee bit? Just turn it to say 16 or whatever, it's a bit more than it is when you hear it. Okay, that's fine. Don't go too much. That's great. It should come on. I don't know, we just had boiler problems. So can you see that there is no benefit in not forgiving? It doesn't help anything at all. There's not even a chance of it helping. Forgiving is a much better objective. When you see that, you forgive. Even if you're not able to do this the first time or the second time, nevertheless you wish, may I be able to forgive one day? Even if you can't truly straight away do it, it's a bit too much of an ask in one day, but may I be able to forgive in one day? And then if you keep that always in your mind, you will be able to forgive one day. I'm reminded of a story that Lama Yeshe Rinpoche told me about when he was traumatized because, when they left Tibet, they were being chased and, they could have got killed very easily. Most of the people that were with them were killed or shot or died out of hunger or whatever. Dire situation, and it went on for months and months and months. Finally, they got to India, So then they came to the UK, but he was still traumatized. He was only 15 when all this was going on. So of course it doesn't just go like that because you're in a better situation. You still have kind of post-traumatic stress, you could say. And he was talking about how he was trying to not blame the Chinese people for what had happened because it wasn't the Chinese people. It was down to Mao Zedong, really. Mao Zedong was the one that organized it, and a lot of the Chinese people also died because of that situation, the so-called Cultural Revolution. So anyway, he brought it down intellectually to, okay, so it's really Mao Zedong. If I had to blame anyone, it's him. So he always felt really bad about Mao Zedong and very angry about Mao Zedong. But then one night he had a dream, and he dreamt that he, Lama Yeshe Rinpoche, but before he was Lama, before he was a monk, he was just a young guy, he dreamt that he had a grocer's shop. He was the boss in this grocer's shop, and his assistant was this guy called Mao Zedong. So, and he looked like Mao Zedong, and so he was like, Lama was the boss, and he could say, well, okay, go and do this, go and do that, and he woke up from this dream, and his perception of Mao Zedong had completely changed, and from that point on, it's not that he thought he was a great guy after that, but at least he didn't have that negative feeling about him that was holding him back. It wasn't harming Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong probably dead by the time, I'm not sure. But either way, it wasn't harming or helping Mao Zedong, it was only harming himself. And once he dropped that negative attitude, he never had a problem with that. He slept well, didn't have any more weird dreams about Mao Zedong. Well, that was a very positive dream. So that shows you the difference about that change in perception and a certain forgiveness, even though, of course, he's not whitewashing what Mao Zedong did, but he's not holding that hatred that's blocking him. I think that's a relevant story. So now, we'll look at it a little bit more in terms of, just let that ambulance pass. We'll look at it in terms of a more global situation, because, okay, we can't change the world, but we can change how we see what's going on. So, and it seems that Rinpoche says, I'm often asked why there are still so many wars around the world. I'm not sure when this was taught, but it doesn't really matter because there's always wars going on, always. There's never a time when there isn't. So why are there so many wars going on around the world? And a few thousand years ago, although it was okay, maybe our minds have become very sensitive now. The way he's expressing that, it kind of presupposes that you accept the understanding that mind is beginningless and endless through many lifetimes. So a few thousand years ago, although it was the same mind, there was less opportunity for the mind to become angry or violent. Why? Because when there was fighting in certain areas, it was pretty simple fighting. It was confined to that area, that group of people were fighting each other. We wouldn't have known about it if we lived even just 10 miles away, let alone on the other side of the earth. And also the fighting was generally fisticuffs. There were no weapons then, maybe you might throw a stone at somebody, but there were certainly no bombs or guns or anything like that. So it was a more simple situation. When it's finished, it's finished, and, But today is a different thing. And our minds have become very hypersensitive because we hold so many negative accumulations from all the lifetimes that we've experienced, in different countries and different war times. So that when we're reborn, our mind is the continuation of all those experiences that we've had in previous lifetimes. So some of those are like still the seed of anger, still the seed of violence, or unforgiveness, or trauma, or whatever. We can be born with a certain amount of that. But there's always been violence in different countries. In the past, we did not necessarily hear about it because there was no communication. There was very little communication. No radio, no phones or internet, no international papers, newspapers, magazines. So even though there may have been a lot of violence in a particular country, often we wouldn't have even known about it. But now, communication is faster. So we get to hear about it the same times it's happening, pretty much. So it's not necessary that there are more wars, but the wars themselves have changed, and our ability to know about them has changed a lot. And also he's saying it seems to him that the media, the television, the radio, are often a sort of encouraging a kind of response to that war, like, look what this country is doing to you, what are you going to do about it? And their job is to present the information, but the information they present often gives us more reasons to fight, depending on how it's presented. And even you just look between one news people and another news outlet, and they will be saying quite different things, and in different ways. So, who's right then? You know, what am I supposed to do here? Also, if they're dealing with more family problems, more personal problems, very often they like to report on, people that are going through difficulties. Some famous person that got divorced or is going out with someone else, and this is all the gossip sort of magazines, and they really delve into it. They don't care how much harm it might cause the people that they're talking about. They want to sell their newspapers, and people buy them. Or the magazines or whatever. So they're very good at reporting who's going out with your husband or your wife. They help you to discover things which increases your anger. I mean, we sort of laugh a little bit when it's a famous person, but put yourself in the shoes of the famous person. That's horrible. When everything, your relationship's breaking down, and you're in the newspapers about it. Actually, this is very, I'm not going to say who it was, but yesterday I was in a shop, I saw someone famous that I know slightly, and I know also that they're going through a difficult time because it's in the newspapers. And I wasn't so close that I could have easily said hello, and I don't know them very well, but I think they would have recognized me. I'd love to say hello. And then, then they were in a different part of the shop, and then I didn't say anything, but it stuck in my mind because I thought, that person probably could do with a friend right now. I wasn't a friend. I wasn't close enough to be a friend, but I felt slightly, maybe I should have said something, but then the situation really didn't allow it. And then afterwards, when I was leaving that place, and then I actually saw them in their car. And again, I thought, should I go and say something? But I just didn't know them that well enough. It might have been seen as intrusive, But anyway, so please don't, because somebody is well known, think, oh, well, they've got all this, that, and the other. It's hard when you're in the public eye. Can you imagine if you're going through something difficult in your life and then you read about it in the papers? It's horrible. So, of course, it's good to have a free press and freedom of information. When one is able to freely publish information, that's good. But the media does need to try to be more compassionate in finding ways to help people, not just make big stories to sell newspapers. We have to try to find ways to bring people together and not distort the information. And, a good journalist will do that. But most of them don't. Most of the press doesn't. So it's important to learn to communicate in a non-violent way. If you have a spiritual path and you realize that your neighbor is constantly angry about your simple actions, such as where you put your rubbish or how you pick your flowers or something that might impinge on them to some degree, according to Buddhism, you shouldn't go and shout at your neighbor. You should try not to discuss with your neighbor and say, look, I'm doing this and you're not being reasonable. Instead, look into yourself and see what's irritating other people. What are you doing that irritates other people? You should analyze yourself to see what you are doing. That's not to say that they're always right and you're always wrong. It's not as black and white as that. Again, something happened to me yesterday, a very strange thing. I have a neighbor who doesn't like me for whatever reason. He's not terribly well, and I don't know what the reason is. I'm always nice. I'm always at least polite to him, and he's not always polite to me. In fact, sometimes he's quite rude. But yesterday he knocked on my door. I don't think he's ever done that since he started being weird with me. And so I was, oh, hello. I was like, surprised. And not negative, I just was surprised, And he came to complain that my heating was making a noise. The boiler was making such a noise that it was disturbing him. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, it drives me mad as well. I hate that blooming boiler. And it completely took the wind out of his sails, because I think he was probably, in retrospect, expecting me to say, well, defend it. No, I'm on his side. I do not like that boy. Oh, and then he was kind of, really, he was quite nice to me. And he was sort of a bit, didn't know how to respond, because I wasn't responding in the way he might have expected me to. And I said, well, I'll try and, he said, oh, I don't need you to turn it off, or wouldn't you? I said, well, I'll try to be more, because I have to run around from each radiator, this one, that one, and then that one makes a noise, and I'm in the middle of eating, and then that one makes a, and it's not a sustainable situation. He said, have you tried talking to the landlord, which I did at the very beginning, but I haven't since, because I don't want to put it on him either. But now that I know that it's upsetting the neighbours, then that puts it into a different thing. But anyway, it ended up being quite a positive experience. At least I felt, well, there seems to be some movement here. He's actually talking to me like a human being, So, yeah, there you go. So if you are irritating somebody by something that you're doing, look into it first. First do that, okay, and put yourself in their shoes. Or maybe I could, change that behaviour somewhat, And sometimes you can't. Sometimes they're being totally unreasonable, but at least you can try. You can't do anything about them, but you can about yourself. And even just doing that helps. For example, if I'd allowed this neighbour to get me angry in response to him, then I would have answered the door in a very different way to the way I answered it, and then the nice part wouldn't have happened, because I would have just been right angry back at him, So, yeah. Okay. Now then, this is a very interesting point. If you're not able to discover anything, then it's often said to be due to cause and result. So you've looked into your response, you still don't know what's going on here. Why is this happening? I feel like it really isn't my fault. I've looked at the situation, in stable mind, and I can't discover anything. Then you need to look that it could be due to your karma, which is cause and result, because karma is not just about what you do and have done in this life. So it could be from several lives ago, many lives ago. And this works not only as individuals, but globally. Sometimes, positions get so embedded because they've been happening over many, many years, a long, long time. So that you have this collective karma, or it might be talking about individual karma. So karma actually means action. And they're actions that cause either a positive or a negative result. So the positive results, we don't notice, we just enjoy them. We're born into a nice situation, we don't think, aren't I so fortunate? You just think, yeah, take it for granted, I must deserve it. Well, kind of you do, probably, but you also will deserve, or when I say deserve, maybe it's not quite the right word, but you will experience negative results from past lives as well as positive ones. So, for example, we can count ourselves very fortunate that here we are, we're talking about the Dharma, we're doing something positive to change for the better. That's incredibly fortunate to be in that position, to even think about doing something like this. Mostly, many people feel totally helpless all the time, always the victim of the situation. So now we look at the karma, our personal karma must be pretty good generally to be in this situation, but that doesn't say we're perfect and we've never done anything wrong. Of course we have. And so we have collectively as well as individually. So we have to take that into account. It could be in a past life, you maybe did what your neighbour is now doing to you. So maybe in a past life I was doing something negative to a neighbour. And now it's coming back to bite me on the bottom. So I'm dealing with it as best I can. So due to that karmic connection, you're having this present experience. Therefore, in terms of responding with anger or reacting with anger, we should think of in terms of purification. And recognize that what we experience can be due to something that's happened in this life, or it can be from actions in many, many lifetimes beyond. So, of course, you can't bring to mind anything from this life, and we don't really remember much about the past life, but we think, there will be stuff. There will be stuff that we weren't perfect. So maybe it's due to something you did in your past life, and you may be able to purify this. So it doesn't hurt to apologize to your neighbor rather than be angry. Actually, that's what I did yesterday without thinking about it. I just did it because I too was experiencing the same, the noise. Maybe it would have been harder if I wasn't, and it was something that I wasn't experiencing. Probably that would have been a lot harder. But because we both shared this, then yeah. Then there's another kind of investigation you can do, and it's more like a mind investigation in which you're finding the cause of the misunderstanding, the cause of the anger. So you find the things that make you angry and make you feel that you have to say something. Where does this come up from? Where does it come from? And you should keep on analysing until you find something. You keep looking until you say, okay, now I found how to deal with it. Or, I can't find anything, therefore no cause exists. In which case the anger subsides because there's nothing causing it. So it's a win-win really, isn't it? Either you find out what the problem is, or there isn't a cause, I'm just winding myself up for no good reason. Keep my eye on the time. So when anger prompts you to want to beat someone up or say angry words to someone, ask yourself where this is coming from within you. If we look outside, there is so much samsaric life. There's so much, samsara is suffering, isn't it? Samsaric is this cycle of suffering. There's so much samsaric life and so many things are happening, and sometimes we're not able to deal with it. It's just too much. If you see 10 people, one person might make you feel happy, another one might make you feel sad, another one might make you angry. Either way, we're projecting onto each individual person in a way that you're all just sitting there. I don't like that look. I can feel myself getting angry. She looks kind. Oh, she's smiling. I feel quite happy looking at her. So we're just doing this to ourselves. I'm angry because this person doesn't laugh nicely. I don't like the way they laugh. Or this person doesn't talk nicely. They've got a funny way of talking. Don't like that. She's walking funny. What's up with her? I like it. I dislike it. And judging all the time. And then we're encouraged to judge all the time. So if you ever look at these magazines, and sometimes I pick one up and I look at, oh my God, it's so judgmental about everything. And especially if you're the way that person dresses, the way their bodies are. This is nice, that's not nice, why they should do something about that, they should have some surgery for that. Judgmental all the time. How horrible, it's cruel. And this is what people read, and that's what they get to think like, because it's so prevalent. Everywhere you see, you pick up one of these gossip magazines, they're everywhere. Many more of those than there are of something useful to read, and they're all extremely judgmental. So that inculcates into you, that's how it is, that's the way I am, that's the way I should be. I'm noticing things like, oh, she doesn't dress very well, and I don't like the way she's tied a scarf, that's so last year. We get really, really picky. Of course you can notice things, but then to form a negative opinion of someone on that basis. Crazy. I like it, I don't like it. Everything is projected outwards and is making us unhappy or happy. I'm not sure if it does make us happy, but anyway, it certainly makes us unhappy. If instead, leave that person alone, whether it's someone you know or someone in a magazine, just forget about them, let them get on with their own life. Look into yourself and think, where is this feeling coming from? For example, online, there's a lot of hatred online, isn't there? About people that the other people don't know. They don't know them. They've never done anything to that person. They're just famous for some reason or other, or they're online for some reason. And then they will have a go at them, like really big time, critical and nasty, and then trying to get other people to have another go at them. So then you get this hate stuff going, and people kill themselves because of their suffering this. And it's whipped up. Not only is it looked into, but it's actually whipped up by people, and the companies that they make, because they are making money out of people's anger. They're whipping up the anger. This is happening so much right now. Do you want me to name names, or should we just take it as understood? Let's take it as understood. But we are participating in that to a greater or lesser degree. But that's why we have to be really aware of it, because it's insidious. Sorry, I'm ranting a bit. This is not what Rinpoche is saying. I don't think they had quite as much what I call anti-social media in his day. But yeah, it's so prevalent and it's so negative. That's why I removed myself from it. But even as someone that doesn't use those platforms, you can't help but receive some of it through various means, and also I like to be aware of what's going on, even though I don't want to participate in it. It's good to be aware, so then you know what people are, where they're coming from a bit, and it's so negative. So anyway, at least you can distance yourself from it. So if instead You leave that person alone, look into yourself when you're angry. This is called investigation of oneself. The person is only the object. The other person, whoever that is only the object. Being upset or not being upset has nothing to do with him or her. It has to do with how you project yourself onto that person. And I think the example of the social media thing is a really good example, because you don't even know that person. You don't even know them, and you're angry with them, or highly critical of them. You never met them in your life. It's ludicrous, isn't it? I mean, if it weren't tragic, you know. Look into yourself and investigate where these feelings are coming from. Is it from my hair, or my brain, or my heart, my organs? I don't think anybody can find a thing called feeling upset that exists within oneself. It's like chasing a shadow. You keep on chasing and chasing until you realize it's a shadow. There's nothing there. There is nothing there. And when you realize, oh, this is really just my shadow, then the desire to chase it no longer exists. How could I chase it? Because wherever I go, this shadow is there. So understanding somehow comes, and then you have acceptance, and then you become peaceful. When you're peaceful, you're not angry, are you? You're peaceful. Actually, the example of a shadow, sometimes, have you ever, and sometimes I've gone into a room, and I've seen something like, boom, and I thought, oh, what's that? And it's my shadow. But for a split second, I thought, oh, maybe it was a rat, or maybe, just that thought comes in, and I kind of go into, oh. And then I realize it was just my shadow. So it's like that. Once you see it in that way, then you're not angry, or you're not afraid, because often fear, the anger comes from fear a lot of the time, doesn't it? That's our response when we're afraid. We can get angry. So when you see that you're projecting onto that person, then it takes the poison out of the situation, because you're not seeing it in the same way. It doesn't change the situation or the other person, but you change. You change how you understand and how you experience. You're not upset. You may not, the situation might still be negative, but you're not in a state of upset, like without any stability. So therefore no clarity. Because when you're upset, it's like, anything that's upset is not stable, is it? It's in turmoil, and therefore unable to see clearly. So whatever you're seeing through that lens is going to not be workable. It's not going to be accurate even, When dealing with emotions, I think the meditation technique is not to try and block your emotions, because you can't block your emotions. You should welcome them like they are toys, something you can play around with. You play with the emotions, you can work with them. If a mature person is playing a game with a toy car, he or she doesn't try to get into the car and then get angry saying, I can't get into my car, because they're not. Anyway, he goes on a bit about toys, so. There is a different way of transforming negative emotions. You can just leave the emotions and accept that you have them and look for any positivity, or you can look through the negative and ask, what is this negative? Who is the creator of this negative? Maybe you can't find anything called negative except that which you have created. Then you may have the understanding that you're the one who's creating the negativity. It's not outside you, it's within you. Transformation can be achieved by these investigations and by looking through the negative emotions. There are different ways of doing this, sometimes through investigation, sometimes through acceptance, just through acceptance. You don't get rid of the negative emotions, but through understanding. You can't get rid of negative emotions, but through understanding. The fact of them being negative no longer exists. Perhaps you call that transformation or understanding. And then he ends with this: I think patience is very important for whatever you wish to achieve. Not only if you're on a spiritual path, in all aspects of life, patience helps you to achieve things. And this is so much needed in today's world. I mean, it's always been needed, but especially now because we're so impatient. We want it now. You know? So we don't persevere so much. I've said before, this area of Leith is that the motto is perseverance, you know. So it's something we have to train in, because we tend to be very impatient, and we're taught to be. We're taught to be. I don't mean you go to school to learn it, but the way society is going, you know, we want it quick. Oh, and I've got 3G. I've only got 3G. I want 5G. You know, why haven't got 5G around here? It's what even is 5G? I don't even know. I'm not totally antediluvian, but I don't really mind if it takes a few seconds longer. Anyway, you know, we become so accustomed to having what we want when we want it, that the slightest little bit of a delay or something can, you know, make us into monsters of anger. So then a good way to sort of work on this lack of patience is something that we probably experience on probably daily, you could say, is within the family or with who we live with, you know. And however nice the relationship might be, you know, I'd be surprised if there's not some element of impatience. Or, you know, things like that come up all the time, don't they? Especially with loved ones. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I don't like that thing. So, whenever you have problems or arguments with your family, they may say, for example, and sometimes people say this, you're a Buddhist, you shouldn't be saying things like that, you shouldn't be doing like that, you're a Buddhist, like as if all Buddhists are already Buddha, which we are, but we don't know it, so. You know, it's like, you should be perfect straight away. You know, why are you dressed like that and you're not perfect? But we do say things, oh, you're a Christian, you call yourself a Christian? That's not very Christian, the way you act. And it becomes an argument. And then the arguments go on so long, one might think, maybe if the other one thinks, I have given up religion, it will improve my family relationship. I'll pretend I'm not a Buddhist, or I'm not a Christian, or whatever you are. In reality, when you're not getting on too well, that kind of thinking will not change anything. Even if you give up whichever your religion is, it'll make no difference to the relationship. They'll find something else. The fights, the jealousy, the misunderstandings will go on, no matter what you do. It's just that they'll blame you for something else. So, you shouldn't look at family problems as having anything to do with your faith. Buddhism is much deeper than family arguments. It has more to do with your faith and your beliefs. If our spiritual path does not solve our family problems, what does it solve? The purpose of it is to improve your understanding and give you a broader view. Previously, we might have had a very narrow mind and thinking that as long as you, your family, your friends are quite well and quite happy, you don't really care what's happening to other people as long as the family's all right. Although you say that until you have an argument with one of your family members, then you're not so keen, then you don't really care, do you? They've upset you, whatever happens, you know, so it shows you there's no actual definitive understanding because things change all the time, and the family member that you're really friendly with today could be your enemy tomorrow because you've fallen out over some ridiculous thing. You know, so it shows that it's not that personal, that it's changing because of the way you're interacting. Otherwise that member would always be your best friend or whatever, or your close one, but it's not, it changes. I mean, you hear people say, I hate you. You know, this is the person they've just, you know, they just married or their mother or father. I hate you, you know, you hear that. So, the purpose of our faith is to give us a broader view. Previously, you had a very narrow mind, thinking that, you know, okay, so as long as the family friends are okay, then that's okay. But we've just seen that that's not how it really is. Following a genuine spiritual path means that all beings become like your family. So you care about other people too. You are not concerned, you are concerned about others, and you are not being narrow-minded. So this is when we can broaden out that loving feeling, or acceptance anyway, of all beings, impartially, no matter who they are. So that is not easy. You know, it's not, we have tribal sort of elements to us, and often we're encouraged to be tribal. But really, when you were talking about a human being, I mean, for example, you might support one football team, so you're supposed to not like the people in the other football team, you know, or supporters of the other football team. I mean, there's a difference between having a bit of sort of banter about oh, your team's rubbish or whatever, but you don't have to, you don't hate that person, or at least, you know, hopefully you don't. You know, you're having some kind of cheeky play, that's sort of probably okay. But when it descends into real hatred, and then, you know, do you remember when people used to, I think they probably still do, fight each other because they have different football teams? And then, of course, you can apply it to the wars and the situations, you know, because you live there and you live there, or there's an argument about this, and it might be going on for many, many years, and many lifetimes even. And then surfaces and then goes down, surfacing again. So without forgiveness, without understanding, it just carries on. So that's why we owe it not only to ourselves, but we owe it to the world, to work on ourselves, because otherwise, no, it's not going to change. So, if you're not concerned about others, you're just being a bigot, really, narrow-minded. And also in relationships, you need also to be able to manage people's expectations, your own expectations of the other person and their expectations of you. Because you have to be honest, and if you're not able to manage the expectations, you should say so. Why do you have to pretend? You know, I think if you start to pretend, then that pretense grows all the time, and then you have to maintain a lie. You know, say, I don't know, I mean, relationships change all the time, don't they? So if something's changed that, you know, you're not acknowledging, you're not accepting, basically, and then it becomes, you end up having to make a lie about it. Or pretend that it's fine, it's all fine, but it isn't. So something needs to be worked on here, but you're not acknowledging it, you're not identifying it so that it doesn't get worked on. So then obviously there's no room to improve the situation. So we have to acknowledge it. And if it's, it could be on a collective scale, or it could be an individual thing. So then you should tell people immediately, very straight, and say, I'm sorry, but this is my limit. If I can do something for you, I will. But if it's beyond that, if you're asking too much of me, then maybe you should go to somebody else. If they have unrealistic expectations of you. The best people to give advice are those who show their limit. They show you their vulnerability, they show you their limit, and they should also point to where you can go for advice if it's not within their capabilities. I can't help you with that, but I know someone who can. And then he kind of, this is really sweet, he gets quite personal, Rinpoche. He talks about his own family. He said, you have to, I know that Rinpoche, most of you do know that Rinpoche was somebody that a lot of people went to for advice because of how wise and compassionate. Now he says, I have children, but I've never managed to educate them according to my own ideas. I think my ideas are too worrying. The Orient is maybe too far away. I suppose when children grow up in this country and their friends are here, then if you are different from all their friends, children are not willing to listen. Children will listen to what the majority of people say. The important thing is to try to be helpful and useful for your children whenever you can. He's saying, I found it difficult to educate my own children. I was so relieved when I had to. 9 times out of 10 when I used to see Rinpoche, a lot of work with him, so I could ask him things, and whenever I went to him with a problem, it was generally about dealing with a child or something like that, and he would say, well, you're a mother, what do you expect? So, it was kind of, oh, right, okay. It is simpler to be, he's saying, simpler to being a doctor. You can't treat your own children. You can't bear to operate them. You have to find another doctor. If you are a therapist, you can't do therapy on your own children. You're too close. So you have to find another person. He's saying, I'm very good at giving advice to everyone, except my own children. Children think, he's my father. They don't think of you as a person who has understanding of worldly life. A father's a father, a mother's a mother. My father talks too much. My mother talks too much. That's all you get from your own children, so it's difficult to educate them. Anybody who's got children will probably relate to this. You may think, my children will not listen to me. If there are problems between you and your children, it's probably better to leave it alone. That way, at least they will not have a bad feeling. And that's not easy, isn't it? Because we tend to interfere as parents. My parents keep saying they will not have a bad feeling. My parents keep saying that they don't know anything about saying things that they don't know anything about. That's the other thing. They always think you don't know anything. If they think if they think they know best, it's better to let them think that way. The children, that is. If they think their parents know something and they want to get advice, maybe they will come when they need help. So back off. That's so hard. Okay. So I think at that point, we'll just have a sit and cogitate, if you like, to sort of think about what we've been talking about, but mainly, first of all, get yourself into a nice calm state of mind. So rather than thinking straight away, we can just be rather than think. But when you do start to think, then think about what we've been talking about rather than random stuff. Just direct your thoughts towards that. And then when you get a bit kind of tight with that, then let that go and just remain in a nice, stable state of mind. So first of all, we'll just get into a good posture. I do recommend keeping the eyes open a little bit, but not using them. I know that sounds a bit strange, but it's kind of like, it's like the focus is different. The focus is inward, but you can still see, things like, it's like you're seeing, you can still see the outside, you can still see, but without looking, if that makes sense. It's like you can still hear, but you're not listening, because your focus is inward, so you're looking inwardly with your mind's eye. So just focus on the breathing a little bit. That helps to settle the mind. Notice your breathing coming in through the nose and down into the lungs. And the diaphragm, you notice the diaphragm moving, and the belly filling as well. Relax your belly. Allow it to inflate with each in-breath and deflate fully as you breathe out. So you're breathing fully and deeply, and this also you'll find helps your mind to settle and also go deeper. So just at the beginning, focusing lightly on the breath, allowing the mind to ride on the breath. And just enjoy that feeling of settling without any artifice, without trying. Just appreciate being in your natural state. Mind open, resting in awareness, non-judgmental, no agenda, just resting your mind in its natural state. And eventually, of course, thoughts and feelings arise, so when that happens, you just direct that energy into reflecting on what we've been talking about and seeing how it applies to your life. And then if you start to get too tight with that, then just go back to resting your mind in its natural state of limitless awareness. And remembering Rinpoche's words to start with yourself. Notice the difference between when you're resting with awareness and not engaging with any particular whatever comes up. You're just resting, but you're aware. And notice when, through habit, you do start to engage with thoughts or feelings. Notice the difference in, if there is a difference in how you feel. If you engage with them, how you engage and how that makes you feel, or if you let them go and just remain being here and now. course, when we're having these sessions together, we have a time limit, and so there's not very much time for reflection and meditation, but we have a little taste of it, and if you're focused and relaxed, then it's worth doing, even though just 10-15 minutes is not much. But so when you're working at home, practicing at home, then, of course you can go on longer. And not just about length, but regularity. And that's how it works, especially when something is fresh, because we've just been discussing it, talking about it. Of course, you can, if you don't have this book, then by all means ask me, and we can. I've got some here. And also we can talk after the session, but I'm sorry for the people who are watching online, but we can't technically do that right now. So, but I'm glad that you're with us in some ways. Okay, so let's finish our session by dedicating the merit of our practice to share it with all sentient beings. So that's the motivation behind these words. Usanam je tamche sekpani topne nyepe danam pamche ne jigana chirbala drukpai sipe sole doar show. Okay, so I think also what I thought comes to mind, because we're working on ourselves, we should try to be, persevere and be regular in our practice, but we should also be patient with ourselves. The patience we should extend to others and also to ourselves, because this is not easy, this work. This takes time, and it takes patience and perseverance. So don't make yourself angry, as well as not making anyone else angry. Don't make yourself angry about yourself, because it's in your hands to do. If you see, okay, well, I should really be doing, okay, so then do it more, but don't beat yourself up. I think it's helpful to treat yourself like you would a child, and you're hopefully a child that will listen to you, so not to just give in to any old thing, but to be patient and compassionate with yourself as well as others. Okay. Thank you.